Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to those of you around the world. Welcome to the daily Trade the Chain crypto update, where we give you everything you need to know for the next 24 hours and hopefully the next few days. We are now midway through the short week this week. It is Wednesday, February 22nd. The dollar continues to creep higher, which we discussed yesterday. Very slow creep and still looks like it wants to tag 105 eventually, but still has to get over 104. So for now, the momentum for the dollar is higher, but obviously, it's kind of trading in this very ugly pattern. So it could create a lower high here, which then may send it back down to 103 and a half. But it obviously has to get beneath the previous daily close here around 104. We do have FOMC minutes coming to us in about 41 minutes from from now. They report at 2 p.m. Eastern, so less than an hour from now, and that'll give guidance as to what the Fed is thinking in relation to increased interest rates, or I should say increased federal funds rates, increases in the federal funds rate, as well as their outlook on both inflation and unemployment, which then will permeate into the market in terms of both short-term and long-term outlook. So what we want to hear is generally pleased with progress, less future hikes. We want language that shows finality in hikes rather than elongation. So if they're using general language to talk about the future, it could be, you're talking, from a data standpoint, does that mean 6 months, 12 months, 3 months? But if you're talking about finality, we see rate hikes ending soon. We see rate hikes ending in 2023. We think there's only a few more rate hikes left. Like, these things show finality rather than leaving an open-ended answer. So that's kind of what we want is finality in terms of their actions in the future, and we would like specifics in terms of their outlook in relation to progress, which means we're pleased with inflation's current progress. We think that unemployment, max unemployment will serve the economy well. Or on the other hand, we think max unemployment will make it difficult for it to continue inflation at 2%, or current progress needs to be, higher in terms of deflation. So, those, I just gave you some examples for bullish and bearish. So, take that as you will for the minutes. I'm sure I'm sure we'll see some sort of market reaction, but that's kind of the exact language we'll be looking for. We will definitely, see some reaction in the dollar if the market gets news that is more or less new in terms of, having to price in new information. So, in that case, if they give bearish indication for the markets, the dollar will rise higher. If they give bullish indications for the market, the dollar will likely drop a little bit lower. So if the dollar drops lower, I'm thinking 103.5 would be a decent catch point. If the dollar moves higher, I would say 105 would be a decent resistance standpoint. Of course, we know if the dollar goes higher, risk is likely to move lower. And of course, if the dollar moves lower, risk is likely to move higher. That has not been 100% perfect as it used to be. But as we can see, dollars creeping higher, and it certainly put a cap, or helped put a cap, on equities and crypto price action, especially right around the time of this spike. So something to take note of moving forward. Looking at equities, the key number, we talked about was 4K. I have 4010 lined out on my, as resistance for my general range, but obviously 4K previous daily close, staying above it, a lot of, many 4-hour wicks. There's, 12 hours of wicks here on the bottom protecting below 4K. So it does make sense that we will see a bit of a boost back above 410. Want to see that claimed. And then, of course, we will have the weekly VWAP, and then the 4-hour 200 estimated moving average as, a coalescence of resistance right here. And if you can get above, basically 40-40 has been my magic number. If you can get above 40-40, then you can certainly start to head higher towards the higher end of the range and gather some momentum. It is worth mentioning, a bit of a 4-hour bullish divergence there for equities, as well as, quite oversold RSI after the pump. So staying above 4K, as we mentioned yesterday, really a good sign for continuation. Now we basically have 40-40 to contend with. If you can get above 40-40, I think that there's a lot more reason to think that recent highs may be in, but an inability to get above either the VWAP or the estimated 200 moving average will definitely show weakness and momentum likely to continue down. So if we crack underneath 4K, I am going to guess that 39.20, 39.30 is going to come relatively quickly. So something to keep mind of, especially as we go into getting minutes from the Fed, which will likely breed some volatility, even though we are forming a bottom. This is, at least a local bottom, that is. So very good to see this price action. Need to get above 40-40. We do have potential fireworks coming to us in about 35 minutes. Looking at Bitcoin, very similar to equities, not as low in terms of the current range, but certainly near range lows. It completely swept Sunday's lows. And if you will look here, this is something I've mentioned many times before and will typically come to fruition, especially on a weekly basis. See how the weekly RSI or weekly VWAP reset at the start of the week. Now, depending on if you have a daily or weekly VWAP setting, on the daily setting, it resets every day. On the weekly setting, it resets every week, of course, on Sunday at the daily close. So it had a jump. Basically, VWAP jumped from 23.5 all the way to 24.3 in that instantaneous moment. And typically what you'll see is it doesn't have to happen the day of. Now we're at Wednesday. Typically, price will trade down to meet that previous VWAP. This typically happens on a daily perspective, and I would bet that this met the daily VWAP. Although I'm not looking at it, it does seem like it's a move that would have swept that previous daily VWAP, and now this move swept the previous weekly VWAP. Now, typically what you'll see, especially in a sweep, now we swept Sunday lows, and we also swept the VWAP, which coincides with more or less with lows from last Thursday. We could completely sweep Thursday's lows down to 23.3. That's certainly still in the cards. But typically on this move, you'd start to see some type of reversal action, considering it swept two very critical moments from Sunday trading, which was exactly the top of the week for trading. So in terms of being at least a temporary bull, I think as long as you can stay above 23.6, you've got room to roam probably up to 24. That's obviously the estimated 200 moving average on the 1 hour charts. And I think if you can get above 24, then you can then reattack 24.4, which is a previous daily close. Now, I think that's a little bit tough, but obviously if we get some dovish language out of the FOMC minutes, that's certainly plausible, but very similar to equities, with the estimated 200 moving average sitting there, 40-40 or 23.6 is the number to hold for continuation. And then if you can get above 24, in my opinion, then you have reason to believe that you can still continue to attack the top of this channel, potentially heading into Thursday and or Friday. So very much something to consider there. The key numbers, 23.6 and 24 flat for Bitcoin. Looking at Ethereum, Ethereum definitely weaker than Bitcoin. Let's just check out the ETH BTC chart, which will typically just show you that weakness. We are back in the general demand zone. We did jump out of it. Now we are looking very weak. I would not trust this as a bullish asset, even though we are in the demand zone. It does look quite ugly from a price standpoint. So I'd probably expect this to move down to 0.66, and then potentially, swing failure pattern, then move higher, or eventually just trickle down towards 6 cents for that. So looking at that, basically what it's saying is that ETH is going to be weaker than Bitcoin. So this is something that we should generally consider in our trading. ETH will be, high beta compared to Bitcoin. So this morning we tagged 1600 flat, which we mentioned if 1650 broke, we'd probably see 1600. That happened. And I guess, just to kind of do the circle back for Bitcoin, we mentioned, yesterday, if we got rejected off the VWAP, which is when we spoke yesterday, which was 24.7, we'd probably trickle down to the estimated 200 moving average and or the low end of the range. Of course, a couple $100 off the low end of the range, but obviously that VWAP rejection, very good signal for a trade south if you were trading that yesterday. Basically the same exact thing happened for ETH. Rejected at the VWAP, failed at the estimated 200 moving average, broke through 1650 down to 1600. We called that to a T. So Now, if you are above 1600, you still have some safety and some some potential to rise. So if you can stay above 1600, I would say the next target would be a snap back to 1650, potentially as high as 1660. You have confluence here with both the range, you have the estimated 200 moving average, and you have the previous daily close. And I would bet by the time you get up there, the VWAP is going to start creeping down into that confluence as well. So that looks like a pretty good area if you are long to target for a potential scalp. Remember, we do have FOMC minutes and 31 minutes, so that could, help or hurt, something to consider if you are in the trade. But 1650, not the worst trade, or 1600 up to 1650, not the worst trade in the world. But also do consider you could get cut short at 1630, which is the low end of where we traded for several hours yesterday. So 1630 first, 1650 second, break above 1650. You're now back up targeting 1700. Stay below 1650, retarget 1600. Get rejected at 1630, retarget 1600. If 1600 fails, you're down creeping into 1540 to 1550, in my opinion, pretty much this little demand area here. So although we did have some negative price action yesterday, obviously we're catching where you would want to catch today. Technical price action, sweeping those lows, sweeping that weekly VWAP. DXY in a very interesting position here. Less of an impact as before, but let's see how FOMC minutes take us. And then obviously equities trying to reclaim that range as well. So some positive price action after meeting the technical lows for the ranges that we've been trading in. This is certainly the reaction you want, but you definitely want to see momentum continue. We've only got about 1 hour's worth of positive candles in the bullish direction. So certainly something to consider. Should bullish trades be placed, and where are my target levels and resistance levels? And then of course, with FOMC minutes, do you want to place the trade now and see if that's going to be dovish and bullish, or would you like to wait till after FOMC to place the trade, to play off whatever immediate reaction is going on? So personally, I'm probably just going to stay flat for the time being. We are more than likely in a range, so I do think that if you were to place a bullish bet, it wouldn't be the worst idea. Yesterday we said very similar, but it was dependent on breaking above the VWAP. So that obviously failed. But without too much resistance in the immediate future, if FOMC minutes are positive, I could see us closing up to 24 or higher for Bitcoin, and potentially up to 1650 for ETH. But again, it's a little bit too tricky for me. And, there was a lot of money on the table, previously, a lot of money to be made. Now we're relaxing a little bit. So I think it's better to kind of watch the show and get a better price point. Ideally, I'd like to see, Bitcoin's, I'm sorry, I was on the wrong chart. Ideally, I'd like to see Bitcoin kind of sweep these lows down to maybe 23, crack back into 23.3, and then a good long up would be nice. Very similar for ETH is maybe drop into 1580 and then, buy that swing failure pattern if it gets back up into 1600 for a move higher. So, your risk reward here isn't the worst considering how bad the drop is. And, when we zoom out on, 4 hour time frame and such, we're starting to get into the position where Bitcoin will typically react pretty strongly. Stock RSI is more or less reset. RSI is, below 50, but, we can still catch at one of these levels, in exact science. So LTF, the lower time frames look a little bit, much better than higher time frames, but higher time frames don't look horrible in the greater context of this move. So, but without, solid confirmation and more or less just placing bets on range bets, buying the low, buying the low, buying the low, typically that's, if you really want to make a decent punt right there, but I want to wait for a little bit more confirmation. And we still have we still have FOMC today. We have PCE Friday. So there's no rush, in my opinion, in reference to making a trade now. Better to let the data come in my opinion. But you have your setups and you have your targets if you'd like. Joe, good question. Any inside knowledge of the Coinbase tweet from today? Yes. No, I don't have any inside knowledge, but yes, it was very cryptic. I know that there's been rumors of the Arbitrum, token launch, which, there was a lot of tweets about that the other week with like handshake emojis and stuff like that. There's a bunch of, I think Synapse and a bunch of other, protocols were tweeting the blue dot with Coinbase today. The major rumor right now has been the Arbitrum token. But other than that, I really don't have too much information. I can't imagine what, I, I don't really want to speculate here. The immediate assumption is that it's something token related. Arbitrum has been kind of the big, question mark in terms of like a token launch or, airdrop or whatever. But I unfortunately don't have, any specific information to that. And I don't want to opine too much because I don't really know, and I don't want to send anybody on wild goose chases or get quoted the wrong thing. So if I had to guess, it's related to Arbitrum token. But, and that's just because it's, the main kind of airdrop or launch thing that everybody's been talking about. But at the end of the day, I have absolutely no clue. So I'm definitely following along with that story, much like you guys are, and trying to keep my ear to the ground. So with that being said, good luck, happy trading. Of course, keep a lookout for the minutes soon. We have PCE Friday still. Where obviously momentum is, pushing lower. We haven't seen any, solid shift in momentum yet. But, we are at levels where I think bulls would start to get interested. And if, the slightest kind of spark happens for the dubs, for the bulls, it could certainly send us higher, but not willing to take that bet just yet. So good luck. Happy trading. See everybody tomorrow.